man, I'm actually sticking to my plan of making a video every day. So today I don't know, I was just looking at random videos on YouTube, and something that I saw was Hellsing versus Hellsing Ultimate. And, the video was fine, but then I looked at the comments and I, was about to have an aneurysm. I think my blood pressure was also about to, reach the point of me becoming a volcano in human flesh. So I figured I would just talk about some of the things that I saw in the comments and how I thought they were kind of silly, and maybe just give my general take on this. Before we begin, number one, I kind of want to just say this off the bat. If I was like rating these objectively, I'd probably give like that an 8 and that an 8. Like, I think they're both good. I just think they're good for different reasons. And I feel like the comments were trying to paint this picture of like one's better, but I feel like that's not super fair. And again, this is my opinion. You can disagree. Now, before we go a little deeper into my points, I want to express something right off the bat. If you mention this in my comment section, I am going to drop kick your grandfather into a public pool, okay? We don't need to talk about this, okay? It is not relevant to Hellsing Ultimate versus Hellsing. It is relevant in the discussion of Hellsing as a whole, but when we're talking about both these series, I want to talk about what happens in both of these series. The Dawn does not need to be discussed, okay? And if you bring that up as a point, you know what's going to happen. Another thing, we know this is the best one. I think most people like this the most, and fair, really. I can't really refute. It's probably the most entertaining, at least. But I'm talking about the other two today, so we won't get into that. Now, on to the stuff I kept seeing come up. Let's go to the hot button thing, right? The one I just mentioned, Walter. Now, in the original Hellsing, he's just kind of there. He's just like your old guy that's like, oh, he's a veteran in the, vampire hunting business. And, he's just a cool old guy, right? He's basically the trope of the cool old guy. Not really much to say about him, I would say, in that one. So, we're going to move on to the thing that everybody, has conniptions over. In Hellsing Ultimate, I think that it's a little abrupt. There is not enough build-up to the turn, okay? And I don't want to go too crazy into this. I will probably go into like super big spoilers and everything, but I'll try to be a little bit, less overtly spoilery. I think it's a little abrupt. It could have been done a little better. I think the idea is pretty fun, He wants to give the challenge to Alucard. He wants to fight him for real at his peak. All that stuff, yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool. But I feel like it's not established that well, okay? I think they could have taken a little time to, set it up a bit better. Maybe an extra episode that kind of, I don't know, alludes to it a bit more. Or just little moments throughout the series that are a little more clear-cut. I get it, right? Everyone in the comments, don't hold yourself back. I know. I've read it all. Okay, I read the manga, watched both of these, the OVA and the anime, and read that, which we shall not talk about. I get it, but if we're just talking about the merit of Ultimate versus the original anime, 2001, he is not established as well as he should have been to make it a better transition. There's not really much else to say about him because that's the main key here, that moment, and I just don't think it's a super perfect thing. So Walter in the anime was a little bit more, a little less derisive, okay? he wasn't really he wasn't like a super special character. I mean, I think that he was kind of cool, he was a cool old guy, but I think Walter in Ultimate also had his cool old guy moments, so I'm not going to say one was necessarily better at being the cool old guy. I think really the only difference is that transition, and I do not think it is done that well. You can disagree with me all you want, I'm just saying my opinion. Now, I don't really have much else to say about that. I think that's a little bit of a demerit on Ultimate, but I'm okay with it. I think like another big one would probably be this guy, who, okay, Incognito for an anime-only villain was not bad. I think he was not very deep, which is the problem. Like, if there was another season with him, then maybe you could flesh him out a bit better, but he was okay. He didn't hurt me to deal with. Again, would I say he was better than this guy? Probably not. I think this was a little more interesting. It was definitely more, like, wacky and fun, I guess, which is a little weird to say considering what he is and all. But, I will say, Ultimate had the better main villain. But I don't necessarily want to say like Incognito was the worst thing ever either. Like, I don't want to. I feel like a lot of people will go just, Incognito sucks. The Major's great, but to me, it's kind of like Incognito's okay and the Major's great. Also, I feel like the problem comes in with Incognito in the original anime, where Incognito's like, I feel like he's like a stepping stone setting up like a bigger plot. And I think they actually show the Major at one point, even though they don't necessarily say his name, I don't think, but they at least like allude to it. And that's kind of fun. I think if the original anime had a extra, season or two, it could have been a pretty good setup. But I think if we just take it as with what we have, it was a lackluster ending. I'll give it that. So I think villain-wise, at least main villain, like the big bad, I will give it. I will say the Major is better. Hellsing Ultimate wins out a little bit. The original Hellsing, I feel like, didn't have like many super the 2001 anime did not have many like super overt like secondary villains that Ultimate didn't. So I mean, there's not a ton to go on there. I feel like not a lot of the other, major like helpers of the Major were like super fleshed out. I mean, I think they were a little tropey, if you ask me. Like, they were all like, they kind of had their thing, which I think is okay, but it kind of gave me like a Power Rangers vibe, where it's like, I do this one thing, and that's it. That is my character. I use cards, and my whole thing is cards. I use a gun with weird tracking bullets, and that's my thing. Here's my big scythe, and I do weird magic things that, I don't know, for some reason. They all felt like they were kind of like, this is my trope. And, this represents me. And that's not like the worst thing ever, but I think like it could have done with a little more fleshing out of these characters. But it was okay. I didn't hate it. And I think they were probably, it was pretty similar to like Yawn and all that, like when they attack like Hellsing HQ and everything. Like, so it's kind of like, if the 2001 anime had that, I don't think they would have done it much better. So I'm not going to knock Ultimate for that. Now, Saris, maybe this is something most people disagree with, maybe it's not, but I feel like she was just better in the original. I feel like she just was. I feel like they fleshed her out a lot better. She actually felt like, a thoughtful character, and definitely wasn't as, like, tonally jarring as the one in Ultimate that kind of went from, like, a gag to, like, a serious character in the, span of, like, a second. And I'll say this, I actually watched Ultimate first. So if there's any comments like, oh, you watched that one first and that's why you like it more. No, I watched Ultimate first, then read the manga, then original Hellsing anime, and then Dawn. So, no comments on that. I'm just going to say that I feel like because she was focused on in the Hellsing 2001 anime, she ended up being a bit better characterization-wise. So I will give them credit for that. I think that she had a little more depth to her. And I think if they had, if they finished that version of the story out, I think she would have been a very, very, very good character. I think with what we had, she was already good, and I think that would have made her just, all the better. So, if I really had to give credit where credit's due, I feel like the 2001 anime did Sarah's a little better. And I don't want to knock Sarah's too much in Ultimate. I feel like she wasn't like the worst character, but after seeing both versions, I feel like the anime version had an edge. I'm just being honest. Now, the two poster children here. Alucard, to me, is one of the more interesting cases. Because I think there is a fair case to say that both sides of the spectrum, the anime versus the OVA, have different versions that are equally as interesting to me. This boy right here, I think, is very mysterious. It feels like there's something going on. It's like, ooh, what's up with this guy? He kind of thinks in like a meritocracy idea where if someone's good at what they do, I respect them for that, and if they're not, then I think of them as nothing. I also think he has like a noble mentality where not noble as in oh, he's honorable, but noble as in like a like a duke or something, where he has a sense of superiority over people. And it doesn't necessarily just mean superiority over humans, but it's also vampires and half, weird created vampires. Like if you are pathetic to him, it doesn't matter what type of creature you are, you're just pathetic. And he, expects you to be, if you're good at things, then you're impressive to him, which is, I think, why in the original he likes Integra, because she's very, competent, which I think is interesting. I think that's a good character. Now, in Hellsing Ultimate, unlike the original anime over here, 2001, in Hellsing Ultimate, the focus is kind of positioned toward Alucard, right? So I think Alucard ends up being, a little more fleshed out character. So if you like the less mysterious character that, you know the answers, all this stuff, then I think that's kind of interesting. Also, there's a more he has I think he's a little less traditional evil kind of, because he kind of sees monsters shouldn't exist in a way. He doesn't really think there should be these crazy monsters, and he almost kind of wants to be taken out, which I think is kind of interesting. I like that mentality, but I think it's just a different type of the character that I think either one can be good. It really is just what you like more. Do you like the more mysterious, cool vampire character that you're kind of always wondering, what is he thinking? And, you see, some of that, stuck-up mentality, but he's more of, a supporting character? Or do you like the more, focused character, where you see, oh, this is, a brooding character, he's deep, he's thinking about, oh, man, what am I? Why do I exist? Whatever, right? It's kind of well, which one do you like better? I don't know. I think it's really just up to what you like. I don't even think of them really as the same character. When I think of Alucard in Ultimate versus Alucard in the 2001 anime, they don't even feel the same to me. And I think they're both fun and interesting. It's just they're different. So I think in that case, like when people compare them, I don't think it's fair. I think they're not close enough. They're not similar enough for me to like fairly say which one's better. And that's all I really have to say about Alucard. Now, the last person I definitely want to talk about is Integra. Uh, and the reason I saved her for last is because I really don't think there's as much to say, really. I think you see a little more of like her past in the 2001 anime, but you know, it doesn't really feel out of character for the Ultimate version if you saw that in Ultimate as well. So it's kind of like, I feel like she's the one character that between the two series I feel like is almost the same. And you could probably, with a little bit of semantics, like distinguish, like, oh, this is a little different or that's a little different. But for the most part, they're the same, I would say. You know, I'm not here to do some like super deep dive, but I would just say like for the most part, you know, she's like a very how do I put this? Like straightforward character, very you know, stuck in her job, trying to get things done, you know, practical, just badass, you know? Like she's just like a cool character in both. I feel like they both kind of fit. And I really don't think there's as much to say when comparing these two, because I feel like she kind of fits the same role to me in both. Again, you can disagree, but that's just how I feel about it. And now, you know, just as like a wrap up, I kind of just want to talk about some like differences between like how the stories are told, and you know, some like general things about the anime and the 2001 anime versus the OVA. Of course, the animation's better in the OVA. I don't really think there's even much to talk about there. It just is. I think you can comment on style. Like, I kind of like the gritty style of the 2001 anime. I think that's kind of cool. But, you know, it's kind of just what you like more, I guess. Like, I think, like, the 2001 anime is a bit more of, like, a slow burn, like, story-driven thing. Whereas, like, the OVA is kind of just like a, we're getting through this story, we're going to do everything like in the manga, we're going to make it, like, you know, super cool and flashy, and oh, wow, this looks great. So it's kind of like, you know, do you want, like, that slow burn, or do you want, like, the big package of just like all we can put in, we're going to put in? It's up to you. I think it's really just like slow burn versus like the, you know, super big package of everything you can put in there. I think the organization thing was done a little better in the anime. Like, it actually felt like an organization. Like, you knew some of the people in, like, the Hellsing organization, and, like, you kind of had talks with them and everything, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It would have been nice to see a little bit of that in Ultimate. I mean, like, you get, like, that whole mercenary company and all that, and, like, Pip and everything, but, like, you know, that's after, you know, basically everyone in the organization's dead. So I would have liked to see some of these people before they died, so I kind of had, like, you know, a connection. And then when it happened, you'd be like, oh man, that's horrible. But, you know, whatever. I don't think it's necessary. It just would have been nice. Soundtrack-wise, I mean, really, it's just what you like, I guess. I think I kind of like the style of the anime, but I don't hate the OVA. It's kind of like, eh, whatever you like, I guess. And, you know, I will say, there is one thing in the original, like, the anime, right, in 2001, that I really liked that they didn't put into the, like, you know, the other works of Hellsing, which is like the whole storyline with like all that snuff film stuff, and like the vampires and ghouls, and showing that online and all that, and like Ceres going out and like investigating all this stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know, maybe other people didn't, but I kind of thought that was neat. So it would have been nice if that was like alluded to or something in Ultimate. I think that was like one of the original things that stood out to me, where I was like, oh, that's actually like a neat idea, I guess. Like these people using ghouls and things like that to show off on the internet, and all these like terrible people watching this and stuff, and it's just like this ugh kind of scenario. I thought that was just like a one of those moments where I'm like, whoa, like that's like a pretty interesting storyline to dive into. Um, but like that's like the only thing I would say that was in like the original, like the anime that I think like was really like stood out to, like that really like stood out to me, like other than like Saris's characterization. It was kind of just like, whoa, like that storyline is really neat. It would have been kind of cool if they somehow fit that into Ultimate. But I get they were just trying to follow the manga. Fair. Um, but overall, like, I know this video is Hellsing versus Hellsing Ultimate, yeah. But my main point really is just that, like, they're not... It's not necessarily that one's, like, better or worse. It's just they're different. And I think, you know, they have good points in both that, you know, and they're good for different reasons. And I felt like that video and, like, looking at those comments, I was just thinking to myself, like, I feel like that's just the wrong way to look at things. I mean, I don't think one's better than the other. I think they're both cool. I think they're both really fun. I think, like, you know, the old anime did some things better. I'll say that. But Hellsing Ultimate also did some things better. And I think you have to acknowledge both. I guess for the sake of not blue-balling everybody, I kind of like the anime, the old anime, a little better. I'm just more of like a slow burn when it comes to like a good story, and I thought it was kind of interesting to see someone coping with like, oh man, I'm a vampire now, how am I going to deal with this? I just kind of liked it a little better, and I also think like the mysterious thing, I'm more part and partial to the mysterious nature, but I really liked Ultimate as well. I mean, I think like Anderson, and that's like one thing I will say I didn't really touch on. Anderson, I think is fun in both. He is better in Ultimate. And, you know, I'm thinking about this now, and I'm like, man, that sucks I didn't talk about Anderson. He's really good in Ultimate, I won't lie. They fleshed him out a lot more, and he really was just better. So, I mean, it's kind of like one of those situations where I think there's a couple more characters that I like in the original more, but Anderson was definitely better in this one. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I don't even think that's a question. I think he was better in Ultimate. But yeah, but I mean, I don't know. If we're talking total packages, like I lean this way a little bit. I'm just saying. But I think they're both, again, they're both like probably around this 8 marker for me, and it's just like maybe this is like an 8.2 and this is an 8. So it's like I wouldn't say one just destroys the other, and I just wanted to kind of give some of my feedback, I guess, on some of those comments that I saw, and like mentioning like it's a little weird to bring up stuff that's not even in, you know, Ultimate or whatever. Like it's kind of like eh. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, just some of the comparisons between both that I thought were kind of interesting, and you know, where I think certain people need to recognize they're both good at doing different things well, I guess. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you found this somewhat interesting, and I mean, maybe you will take some of these into consideration, I guess, when comparing different versions of things. I also want to say, like, if, you know, like, I understand Hellsing Ultimate is pretty much exactly like the manga, but that doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with it. You know, you have to acknowledge, like, some things will not be done as well, even if they are like the manga. I know that's sacrilegious to certain people, but you know, I just want to say it, I guess. I think, you know, when something does something that you don't really like, you should acknowledge that. Just saying. But at the end of the day, I really like both of these series, and I just hope that people don't get all crazy about saying, like, oh, this one's better, this one's worse, and just kind of realize, like, they're both good for different reasons, and, you know, we can like both without wrecking the other. Yeah, I mean, like, subscribe, and let me know, I guess, in the comments if you, I don't know, have a different opinion on something in this, or maybe, have a different idea for a video that I can do. I'm trying to do as many videos as I can while I can, so if you have an idea, let me know, I guess, and I'll talk about it. See ya.